Welcome to my channel, Statistics for Applied Linguistics. This is Dr. Marnie Menegra, and in this video, we are going to discuss research ethics and data protection. So let's first look at some ethical guidelines. What are some guidelines that we should follow when putting together a research study? The first is having respect for the participants' autonomy. So all of the participants in your study must give voluntary consent with no coercion. And so you will need to get participant consent forms for the students at URV. You are going to get these from the ethics board. So they'll give you a copy of this. If the students are below a certain age, and this varies from country to country, but generally below the age of 15 or 16, you may need to get parental consent forms. Again, you're going to check with the ethics board on whether the participants can sign for themselves or if their parents need to sign. Beneficence. The participants should not be harmed in any way, and this includes having anonymity of data. And this is part of data protection, which we will get to. And then the third thing that we need to look for is justice. The costs and benefits should be divided equally across participants. One group should not be harmed in any way while the other has benefit, or vice versa. And of course, we also need to look at how research integrity can be compromised. And this can be done based on a few factors. The first is fraud. This is where the data is just completely fabricated or falsified. You're changing the data, or perhaps you didn't even test participants and you created the entire data set. An example of this is a former professor from the Netherlands, Diederik Stapel, who had about 28 research articles pulled from academic journals because he didn't actually test any participants in those studies at all. And so this is a case of fraud, academic fraud. Another one is plagiarism of oneself or another. Where we often see this, and it can be accidental, in doctoral theses, sometimes participants need to have 3 or 4 publications from the same study. And this is called salami slicing of a thesis. When you are writing different articles, even though they're based on the same study, the background information needs to be completely different from one study to another. Also, the data being used needs to be completely different. So you may have the same participants. You're going to have to rewrite the method section, but the data being analyzed and the background information and the hypotheses should be different for each of these articles. You cannot copy from one article to another. Also, conflict of interest. This is usually due to funding. We don't really have to worry about this at a master's level, but sometimes industry funds research projects at academic institutions. And we need to make sure that there's no conflict of interest so that the data is being manipulated to what the industry or corporation is actually looking for. And then undue influence of personal values. This happens when people are not objective because the results don't support what they personally believe. So these are things to avoid when setting up your research study. Also, we need to review some questionable research practices, or QRP. And the first one is harking. Harking is when you work backwards. You just go out and do a study, and then you create a hypothesis. You actually had no intention of testing that hypothesis. It's just something that you formulated from working backwards. So that's not the right way to do research. Also, p-hacking. So when we're looking at the results of the study, and we'll get into this a little bit more with some of the statistics, but we're going to have often a p-value, which is the probability that something is true. Now, sometimes people will manipulate the data to make the results more favorable. That might be from omitting something or changing something slightly in order to get that right p-value. So you want a p-value of 0.05 or lower, and this might be changing something in the data set in order to get that number. Cherry picking. This is reporting the results that are favorable while ignoring the other results. So let's say I ran 3 tests with a group of subjects, but only one of the tests actually gave me the results I was looking for, and I ignore the other 2 tests. That is cherry picking. Selective omission. Omitting any results that contradict the hypothesis. So I've got students that are outliers that are not following the general patterns I'm looking for. I'm going to omit those students because they contradict the general results. And if I include them, then maybe I'm not going to get the results that I'm looking for. Also, data snooping. This is a type of p-hacking. So what you're doing here is you're collecting data until you have the results or the p-value that you're looking for. So maybe you've collected data from 150 participants and you've got a p-value of 0.06, but you need it to be lower than 0.05. So you add more participants, maybe 10 more participants, then another 10 more participants. And then you keep doing that until you get a p-value lower than 0.05. Again, these are things that we should be avoiding in our research studies. So for those of you at URV, let's talk about the ethics board. So once you are assigned to your supervisor and you have your research proposal, you're going to need to submit the forms to the URV ethics board for approval. And the first form, and I deleted Carlos's email address and surname from this slide, but you're going to look on the first form for Carlos's contact information. You're going to fill out the first form and send it to him for approval. And this will need to be signed by your supervisor. And once you've completed that, you are going to get an email back with additional forms. So if you need to complete these other forms, they will go to the Research Ethics Committee. The Research Ethics Committee at URV meets the last Friday of every month. Therefore, to have approval before you start your procedure, your ethics form should be submitted by mid-January. So it takes approximately 2 weeks once the ethics board has met. So if you get your first form in mid-January, you'll get the email back within a day or so with a bunch of other forms. There's about 6 other forms you may need to fill out. Also, they will give you the participant request form and the information sheet. So you will need to fill all those out, send them back to the ethics board. They'll meet the last Friday of the month, and then you'll have your approval at the beginning of February. So then you can start your study. And if you get a response asking for a criminal record check, if you are a foreigner and entered the country on a foreigner's visa, then the criminal record check is part of your visa application. However, local students will need to comply and apply for the criminal record check online. This is a copy of what the first form will look like. You're just filling out a section of boxes. You're going to need to give a description of what the study is about on the first page. And of course, this form is in Moodle and ready for you to use. And of course, you and your supervisor need to sign this. So now let's look at data management. Once you've collected the data needs to be stored. So you're going to use a code book to show the values of the data and always save the original data, but use the coded data in the analysis. And the original data should be saved separately, stored and saved in a separate file, in a separate folder from the data for the analysis. It needs to be processed. In this course, we're going to be using JASP for both descriptive and inferential statistics, and it needs to be analyzed. So let's look at data protection. Participant data needs to be stored safely and not accessible to any other party. Readers of your thesis should not be able to identify individual participants. So this is why you'll often see people put ages in ranges as opposed to individual ages when collecting data. Websites accessed by a government entity should not be used for data storage. So you need to use private files stored on your desktop, but not on an internet server. So as part of the US Patriot Act, the US government was given access to Google products and Google sites. So you can't ensure that the data is going to be private if you're using Google Docs or Google Sheets. You should be using Excel and Word files and storing those privately. Data should be collected using MS Forms. So URV has a contract with Microsoft and the forms are on the URV server. And do not put any of the completed consent forms in your appendices of your thesis. You may attach a blank form, but no participant information, personal information should be in the thesis. Just the general information of who participated, the age range, and class identifiers, but no individual identifiers. To use MS Forms with URV, you're going to go into your account, click on the 9 dots in the corner, and the applications window will open. You will go to Forms from that window, and then click on New Quiz, and you can choose a long answer, multiple choice for any of those questions. But do make sure that you go to settings and click on anyone can respond. Otherwise, your participants need to have URV email addresses. Okay, so this concludes the ethics and data protection video. I do look forward to seeing you in the next video, and thank you for joining today.